The Dominion fleet moved through the black of space like a swarm of metallic insects. At its center, the command ship of General Vrathok burned with steady blue light. From here, he ruled over entire star systems with cold authority. The Dominion had conquered 100 species, and he had never once been forced to retreat. To him, humans were only the latest name on a long list of weaker civilizations. Reports had reached him about a small human colony on the outer rim. It was said that the colony was filled with families, researchers, and settlers who had only recently left Earth. Vrathok did not fear them. He thought they were untrained civilians, easy targets. But he had heard a strange rumor, one that caught his attention. Some Dominion scouts claimed that human children showed unusual willpower, even under stress. They resisted interrogation in ways that even adults of other species could not. The general laughed when he first read this report, but curiosity and arrogance pushed him forward. "Take them," he ordered his soldiers, pointing to the images of the human children on the screens. "Bring me the young ones. I want to see what makes them so different." The soldiers obeyed without question. Shuttles swept down to the colony's surface under cover of night. The attack was swift and overwhelming. Human settlers tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and unprepared for a Dominion assault. The children were seized, carried onto the ships, and flown away before the humans could regroup. To the general, it was a small victory, hardly worth his time. He thought the humans would be too scattered and slow to react. After all, other species had often surrendered once the Dominion took hostages. But Vrathok underestimated what humans valued most. Back on Earth and across nearby colonies, the news spread in less than an hour. Transmissions carried the desperate voices of parents, soldiers, and leaders. They all repeated the same message: human children have been taken. The words ignited a storm. Military fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy suddenly changed course. Reserve ships that had been docked for maintenance were rushed back into service. Civilian crews even volunteered their vessels to carry supplies for the rescue. The response shocked neighboring species. The speed at which humans acted seemed impossible. In a matter of days, they had organized one of the largest mobilizations in their history. To outside observers, it seemed as if a single heartbeat had passed between the crime and the counterattack. The general, sitting in his command chamber, began to receive strange messages from other alien leaders. Some were allies, others neutral powers. They warned him in careful words. "You have made a mistake," one transmission said. "You can fight humans in open war and perhaps hold your ground, but never harm their young. For them, children are sacred. You will not face soldiers alone. You will face an entire species driven by a force you cannot calculate." Vrathok scoffed. "Sentimental weakness," he muttered. "They are only small humans. If their adults care so much, then I have already won." He turned off the transmission and focused on his trophies. The children were kept in a secured chamber within the flagship. Dominion scientists approached them with questions, hoping to learn about human biology and spirit. But the children did not break. Even the youngest refused to give the aliens the satisfaction of fear. They spoke of Earth with pride, of parents who would come, of teachers who had told them stories of human survival through wars, storms, and disasters. One boy, no more than 10 years old, stared directly at the Dominion guard and said, "You don't understand. They're already coming. My mom told me humans never leave their children behind." The guard shifted uncomfortably. The words carried a weight he could not explain. Vrathok began to notice changes in his crew. Soldiers who once obeyed without question now avoided the chamber. They whispered that the children's eyes were unsettling, that their confidence was unnatural for their age. Some even muttered that they dreamed of Earth after speaking with them. The general grew irritated. He tightened security and dismissed the fears as weakness. But deep inside, a seed of doubt began to grow. On the 5th day after the capture, Dominion intelligence ships reported unusual activity. Human fleets were gathering in numbers far larger than predicted. Entire strike groups that had been stationed light years away were converging at impossible speed. Reports also spoke of alien species refusing Dominion requests for support. Smugglers closed their routes. Merchants avoided Dominion space. Even old allies sent cold warnings: "We will not fight beside you against humanity." For the first time in his long career, General Vrathok felt unease. The humans were not behaving like other species. This was not fear driving them. It was something else, something stronger. That night he walked through the detention chamber. The children sat together, whispering quietly. When they noticed him, they did not tremble. Instead, one girl stood up and faced him directly. "You think you're powerful," she said in a steady voice. "But you made the worst mistake. You took us. And now you'll see what humans do when someone tries to hurt their family." The words struck him harder than any weapon. For a moment, he saw not children, but the future of a species that refused to bow to fear. Back on the edges of Dominion space, human warships entered hyperspace lanes with terrifying precision. They flew under a single banner carrying a single mission. Entire colonies sent messages of support, declaring that every ship, every resource, every hand was ready to be used for the rescue. The galaxy watched in silence. Many remembered battles where humans had fought with courage, but none had seen such unity before. Even the neutral races began to whisper. The Dominion may have woken something it cannot put back to sleep. General Vrathok sat in his command chair, staring at the growing reports of incoming fleets. His hands tightened on the edges of the console. For the first time in decades, the mighty general did not feel control. He felt panic. And far from Dominion space, the first wave of human ships slipped into formation, their engines burning like stars in the darkness, moving toward the fortress where the children were kept. The stars seemed to tremble as human fleets poured into space. From every corner of known space, warships and supply vessels shifted their course, answering the call. Admirals spoke with one voice. Captains followed orders without hesitation, and soldiers boarded transports with grim determination. It was not just the military. Civilian traders, miners, even explorers abandoned their own journeys to aid in the rescue. Humanity had many differences among themselves, but when children were in danger, there was no division, no hesitation. On Mars, Admiral Serena Holt stood in the War Council chamber. Around her, holographic images of ships lit the room. She had fought in 3 major wars, but she had never seen such unity. "Every fleet is moving," her aide reported. "Old colonies, new colonies, even isolated stations. They're sending whatever they have. Some are unarmed transports, but they're willing to carry supplies and fuel." Serena nodded, her face hard. "Good, every hand matters. This is not about one colony. This is about who we are." Across the galaxy, messages spread like fire. Leaders of other species received them too, short, direct, and filled with unshakable promise. "You took our children." "We are coming," the responses varied. Some alien governments remained silent, unwilling to anger either side. Others sent private warnings to the Dominion, telling them to release the captives at once. A few even offered quiet aid to the humans, providing secret routes and intelligence. In the Dominion flagship, General Vrathok listened to the reports with growing unease. His officers spoke in hurried voices, each new update worse than the last. "Human fleets are gathering faster than we calculated," one officer said. "They have abandoned normal supply schedules. They are pushing their ships beyond safe limits just to reach us." "Impossible," Vrathok snapped. "No species can unite this quickly. Fear will slow them down." But his words sounded empty, even to himself. Another officer stepped forward, her face pale. "General, even the neutral traders have begun to cut ties with us. They are afraid of being seen as our allies. Smugglers are refusing our credits. Even mercenaries will not accept our contracts." The general growled, his clawed hand gripping the arm of his chair. "All because of a few children?" "No," the officer whispered. "Because they are human children." Inside the detention chamber, the young captives sat in a circle. They were tired, but they did not cry. Instead, they spoke to one another about their families, their homes, and the worlds they would one day return to. Their voices were soft but steady. One of the guards overheard them speaking about Earth. The boy who had spoken earlier explained that humans had crossed oceans, survived freezing winters, and faced storms that lasted months. "We always survive," he said. "That's what my father told me. And now they're coming for us." The guard looked away, unsettled. He could not understand how children could speak of rescue with such certainty. Other species would have begged or wept. These humans, small and fragile in body, carried an unshakable fire in their hearts. Back on Earth, families gathered in unity. Parents who had never served in the military volunteered to help build weapons, load supplies, and guide ships. Engineers worked around the clock, ignoring exhaustion. Entire cities lit up as factories switched to war production overnight. Journalists sent images of parents standing together, holding signs with only one word written in bold letters: "Bring them back." The message echoed across every broadcast, every channel, until the whole species seemed to breathe the same demand. In space, the first wave of human fleets began to move closer to Dominion borders. Scouts reported the unusual speed and precision of the human formations. They traveled without fear of traps or ambushes, as if driven by something stronger than caution. Admiral Holt stood before her fleet, her voice calm, but filled with power. "We fight not for conquest, not for territory, but for our children. That is why we will not stop. That is why we will not fail." The soldiers roared their agreement, voices carrying through every channel. Within the Dominion stronghold, General Vrathok could feel the pressure closing in. His empire was vast, but he began to realize it was built on fear and obedience. The humans were different. They were driven not by fear, but by love and unity. It was something his empire could not understand and could not counter. He tried sending messages to other alien governments, demanding support, but the responses were cold. "We will not stand with you in this matter," one message read. "Release the humans, or you will face them alone." The general's hand shook as he crushed the communicator. His own officers avoided his eyes. He knew they were whispering behind his back, speaking of the mistake he had made. Every hour brought new reports of human fleets destroying Dominion patrols. Small skirmishes turned into humiliating defeats. The humans fought with reckless bravery, pushing their ships to the edge, sacrificing nothing but fear. "They fight as if every soldier is a parent," one Dominion captain reported before his signal went silent. The children in captivity sensed the change too. They could feel the tension in the air, the nervous movements of guards, the hurried steps of officers. Hope grew stronger among them. One girl whispered to the others, "They're close. I can feel it." And she was right. From the edge of the star system, human fleets dropped out of hyperspace. Dozens of ships stretched across the black horizon, their engines glowing like the eyes of predators in the dark. They moved in perfect formation, shields up, weapons ready. On the Dominion flagship, alarms blared. Officers shouted warnings, but their voices carried fear. General Vrathok stared at the display. The humans had arrived earlier than any calculation predicted. Their ships burned with determination, not hesitation. He felt something he had not felt in centuries: panic. The children, held in their chamber, smiled when they heard the distant sounds of battle begin. "They're here," the boy whispered. "We told you they'd come." The Dominion fortress shook as the first wave of human ships opened fire. Bright streaks of energy crossed the void, slamming into the outer defenses. Explosions flared, scattering debris across the black sky. Sirens wailed throughout the command ship, and Dominion officers rushed to their stations, but panic was already spreading. General Vrathok stood on the command bridge, his claws digging into the railing. The sight before him was unlike anything he had seen. Human ships advanced in perfect formation, undeterred by heavy fire. They moved as one body, every vessel protecting the others. Even when a ship was damaged, others immediately closed ranks to shield it. "This is not war," one officer whispered. "This is vengeance." The general snarled but said nothing. Deep inside, he knew the officer was right. Human strike teams began boarding smaller Dominion outposts in the system. They moved with precision, cutting through defenses and disabling communications before reinforcements could arrive. Reports flooded the bridge. Patrol stations destroyed, supply ships lost, entire Dominion squadrons retreating. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear. But now fear was working against them. Crews abandoned their posts, mercenaries refused to fight, and allied worlds turned their backs. Everyone in the galaxy knew what was at stake. Human children were being held hostage. No one wanted to be remembered as the species that stood in the way of their rescue. Inside the detention chamber, the children felt the tremors of battle. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered. Yet instead of crying, they clung to each other, whispering words of hope. "They're close," the girl said again. "We just need to wait a little longer." One boy grinned. "Told you. They never leave us behind." In the corridors outside, Dominion guards shifted nervously. Their commanders barked orders, but their eyes betrayed doubt. They could hear the distant sound of heavy boots, boots that belonged to human marines. On the bridge, General Vrathok tried one last tactic. "Open a channel," he ordered. Moments later, Admiral Serena Holt appeared on the display. Her face was calm, her voice steady. Behind her, the hum of a warship filled the air. "General Vrathok," she said, Release the children and surrender. This is your only chance. Vrathok's throat tightened. He had never been spoken to in such a way. He tried to keep his voice strong. We can bargain. We can exchange them for territory, for resources. Surely you do not throw away your fleets for a few small ones. Serena's eyes turned cold. You don't understand us. We do not bargain for our children. We do not measure their lives in resources or territory. They are beyond price. Her words struck the general harder than any weapon. He saw in her expression the same unbreakable determination he had glimpsed in the eyes of the captives. Before he could reply, alarms screamed again. Human strike teams had breached the outer hull. Marines in armored suits swept through corridors, moving with speed and discipline. Dominion soldiers tried to resist, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the attack. Humans fought as if every battle was personal, as if every step brought them closer to family. One Marine squad pushed deeper into the fortress, guided by intelligence reports and tracking signals. Their mission was clear: find the children. The children heard the first sounds of gunfire nearby. The floor trembled, then fell silent. A moment later, the door burst open and armored figures filled the room. Stay together. We're here to take you home, the squad leader shouted. The children's faces lit with relief. They ran forward, clinging to their rescuers. For the first time in days, they felt safe. Back on the bridge, Vrathok watched in horror as the reports confirmed it. The captives had been freed. His soldiers' morale collapsed instantly. Entire units threw down their weapons. The fortress was lost. He considered one final act, using the children as hostages even now. But deep inside, he knew it was pointless. If he harmed them, the humans would not stop. They would only fight harder. His empire would be hunted to extinction. With shaking hands, he gave the only order left to him. Retreat. All ships retreat, but it was too late. Human fleets had already surrounded the system. One by one, Dominion ships were forced to flee into scattered hyperspace jumps. Many never returned. The general sat in silence, the weight of his failure crushing him. For the first time in his long career, he felt true fear, not for his life, but for the fate of his empire. He had underestimated humanity. On the human flagship, Admiral Holt received the transmission that the children were safe. She closed her eyes for a moment, relief washing over her. Around her, the crew cheered, their voices echoing through the ship. When the rescued children were brought aboard, the entire fleet celebrated. Soldiers who had faced death without flinching now wept openly as they carried the young back into safety. Parents embraced their children, and even hardened officers allowed themselves a moment of joy. But the message sent to the galaxy was far greater than the victory itself. Other species had witnessed it all. They saw how humanity had moved with one voice, how they had defied impossible odds, how they had fought not for conquest, but for love. Whispers spread across every star system. Do not take human children. Do not test their unity. Do not awaken their wrath. In the Dominion, fear took root. Allies questioned their loyalty. Worlds whispered rebellion. General Vrathok's name became a warning, a tale told to every commander about the one mistake no empire could afford to make. As the human fleets began their journey home, Admiral Holt stood at the viewing window. She watched the stars slip by, her reflection glowing faintly in the glass. They thought we were weak, she said softly, but they forgot what makes us strong. We don't fight for power, we fight for each other. The rescued children slept peacefully in the cabins nearby, safe in the knowledge that their people had come for them. Humanity had proved once again that in the cold emptiness of space there was no force stronger than the bonds of family. And from that day forward, the galaxy would never forget.